What up, everyone? It's Phil back again with another video, and this one will be kind of a channel update, kind of a rambling and my thoughts and opinions. This one in particular will have to do with the concept and the tools that we use in our music, particularly the power of sequencers. Now, most of us aren't all around professional musicians, meaning that maybe we haven't studied at a music school, or maybe we took lessons as a kid, but for the most part that wasn't our focus throughout our whole life, and eventually maybe some of us got reintroduced to music later on and needed something to help us actually take our ideas from our head as the songs and put it out into a digital paper, I would say. And that's where the power of sequencers came in. And I think it's an important tool, recognizing the skills of the musician, but also allowing each of us to correct and maybe rearrange our songs in the way that we want. And so nowadays we have a lot of sequencers to choose from. My favorites in particular happens to be the MPC style of sequencers. All my only experience has been with the MPC 500, but I've watched a lot of videos on what the 2000 XL, 3000, 4000, 5000, etc. can do. And even the newer models, especially, because those are the ones that are sold onto the market, right? However, in my style or my workflow, I think I tend to like more of the older MPCs. However, maybe I just haven't spent enough time, with the new ones. So I can't really say for sure, but I would think that the workflow is very similar, but it's just updated to today's standards, it being with piano roll and everything, and you can edit the MIDI notes using touchscreen. Recently I picked up another sequencer. Now, the sequencer is different than the MPCs in that it's not an actual sampler as well. And I feel like in today's technology and music gear, we often combine sequencers and samplers together. But back then it wasn't always the case, You would have a sequencer, and then you'd buy, let's say, your sound modules and everything. Either it be a synthesizer, it could be a sampler as well, and you would hook it up via MIDI, and then you would have your sequencer control those MIDI modules or your sampler or whatever else it was. And I found it really cool that I picked up a QY300 I would say a month or two ago, maybe 2 months ago, and it being a really different workflow than what I was used to on the MPC, or just using pocket operators and Volcas and stuff like that. And in this type of sequencer, it was more of, I would say it was more musical in terms of its arrangement, in that being that you can sequence chord progressions, different different changes in tempo, which you can do on the MPC, by the way, but it wasn't as obvious. And also in that being that the screen was a bit bigger, so if I would enter the step edit mode, I could see all the notes laid out at which time, and I can edit its velocity or its timing pretty easily, I would say, compared to the MPC 500, which has a small screen and it could be a bit tedious in the step edit mode. But I would I'm gonna revisit that in the future and make another video on the step edit mode, because at the time I was kind of learning a bit myself, but then afterwards I've read the manual again, and I picked up a few more techniques that might be useful to whoever's watching. So yeah, so the difference between the QY300 sequencer and that of, let's say, the MPC 500 is that the workflow, I would say, on the MPC 500 is a lot more loop based than the one on the QY300 that is meant for arranging, like, let's say, full complex songs. And the interesting part on the QY300 is that you can record your own, let's say you can record your own sequences just in the song mode itself, and then you can even add in patterns that you've made yourself, or pre-made patterns on the device into your sequence, into your song itself in the middle. Like, let's say there's a chord and there's a pattern track, let's say, to just input the patterns and whenever you want, basically, inside your song. And I think that's really cool, but also can be very confusing because you can also do a bunch of chord changes and progressions and everything, but that only applies to the pattern section, I would say. I don't think it applies to what you record regularly in your song mode. So if you want to step record a couple of chord changes and chord progressions, that is the device to use, I would say, the QY300, QY700, and I'm sure the QY170 also have that as well. It's a lot smaller, and I realized that working with bigger gear and equipment is sometimes, if you're doing longer sessions, longer sessions, I would say, it's much better because you have more hands-on control, and you would start to build muscle memory with having more buttons and stuff in place. Like how much easier it is for me to type in what exactly, like, let's say, your velocity or anything that has to do with numbers when you have a number pad itself versus something that you just have to scroll using the wheel, you know? So that's a big plus. However, I would say the downside for using the QY300 is that when you are in pattern mode, you can't just record a pattern, let's say, you would like a sequence on the MPC 500, because on the MPC 500 you can set your sequences to loop, and then afterwards record whatever information you want inside the sequence, and then when you arrange it in song mode, you can arrange the sequences by number. Now with the QY300, what you have to do is that you have to input phrases inside each track of the pattern, and then afterwards you can arrange your patterns accordingly. However, going back to the phrase section to record a small phrase and then afterwards input it into your patch section of your pattern mode is sometimes tedious, and it breaks up the workflow. I wish I was able to just record it on the pattern section itself, and then additionally have that option of patching, and not just be required to record whatever you want in the phrase mode and then afterwards throw it into the pattern section. But I think that's just a little nitpick of mine, but I think it's something that greatly affects the workflow, I would say. What else? I think I get lost sometimes in what I would want to do or what I want to create in terms of music, and some days are easier than others, you know. However, I think it's important just to sometimes take a step back for a moment and then return to whatever you're working on later on during the day. My workflow involves me doing everything at once, you know, in terms of, let's say, making an entire beat, and let's say if I'm rhyming over it, then write some rhymes, and then record my voice, and then edit the video and do everything all in one day, because oftentimes I find it really difficult to return to the things I was working on if I would just leave it, you know, unbaked. And maybe there's a sort of rule to that, you know, like maybe there's a sort of 24 to 48 hour rule that if I didn't finish something in that sort of time, then it's never going to be done. But I don't want it to be like that. Maybe I just have to be more disciplined, and also to ask help from other people, especially when it comes to mastering and mixing beats. I think that I still have a lot to learn there, and just trying to look at myself objectively, which is very hard to do that. I don't think anyone can really look at themselves objectively, but anyways, but looking at myself, my music objectively, I think there is creativity there, but it just needs to be fleshed out a little bit more. And that being said, I hope I didn't ramble too much in this video, and that I was able to express myself clearly and comfortably. And if you are interested in specific video topic, whether it be on the QY300, MPC 500, QY300, MPC 500, the Volcas, or any of the pocket operators I own, which is the PO12, 14, 32, and 33, please leave it down below. I love to hear your comments and opinions. And with that being said, I hope you have a great day, and peace.